Hello, and welcome to Invisible, Breaking Through the Stigma of Addiction. I'm Dean Anderson. I am your host, and I am an addiction counselor and an advocate as well. Today on our show, we have a wonderful guest. His name is Paulie O'Byrne. He is the founder of I Am 1 in 5. He is a frontline worker, an outreach worker, and what else do we got? Oh, public speaker and advocate as well. I'm so happy to have him on the show. And I'm also so lucky to be someone who's had the pleasure to see you speak before and tell your story. Thank you for coming, Paulie.
Thanks so much for having me, Dean.
Fantastic. I love it that you're here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump right into 1 in 5. Tell me more about what 1 in 5 is and how it came about.
1 in 5 was just something that started, I guess, about 8 years ago now. I didn't know how to tell my friends the stuff that I was experiencing, and that I wasn't alone in that, and that 1 in 5 Canadians are affected by mental health and addiction, and also trauma. And I started out just on a Facebook page with 6 guys, just my 6 closest friends, and I got the weirdest kind of reception from them. These guys are big hockey guys, and I thought that they were gonna, the stigma that surrounds us in society, I thought they were gonna think that I was weak, and they all got up and gave me a great big hug. And they just said, thank you for telling us, then we can understand better. And it's grown from 6 guys to it hits 5 continents all over the world. It reaches about 25,000 people a week, and it's really just a tool online to let people know that they're not alone.
Wow. And so, Paulie, tell me more about the big inspiration behind this. What was the biggest thing that pushed you forward to want to do something like this?
I think the biggest inspiration for me was I went to a golf tournament with a good buddy of mine, Theo Fleury, and he saw that I was struggling, kind of telling my story with the shame and the guilt of coming forward publicly with the sexual abuse that I went through. And he just kind of lit that fire in my belly that said, like, hey, you got to do something. And you have a story, you have a gift that you can tell people. And it's a tragedy that turns into a pretty cool story of resilience. And, I think Theo's a huge part of the foundation of inspiring me to do this, but I have gained so much inspiration from across Canada, from across the world, really, from advocates, from people like you, Dean, that that support me through this and support the message of hope and strength, and that addiction and mental health can touch anyone. And if we have a solid network around us, we can recover from that.
And that's what this is all about. It's about looking at how it reaches everybody. There's no bias when it comes to mental health and addiction. It can touch anybody at any time. So you mentioned hockey and Theo Fleury, which I had the pleasure of meeting him as well. He's a pretty good guy and an advocate for addiction and mental health. Tell me, Paulie, how does hockey play a role in all of this? I know that you're also a hockey coach, which I didn't mention in the introduction, but being, Canadian, of course, hockey's huge for all of us. How does that play a role in the whole thing of mental health, addiction, and sports?
I guess, like, hockey for me it's been the best thing and the worst thing in my life. Growing up, I was, avid hockey player. And, when I broke my leg and my playing career ended, I thought I'd get into coaching. And then I went out publicly with the sexual abuse that I went through with the president of minor hockey. And so I didn't want to go on the rink forever. And so slowly, through time and trial and error, I got back to a rink and I got my power back, because I realized that hockey didn't do this to me. It was a really terrible representative of hockey that did this to me, and that I'm successful at hockey, and that I can be successful at hockey. And that showed my first coaching job in Calgary. I won a national championship at 18 months sober. And that was a huge thing for me to just say, I have confidence in myself and I have confidence in my ability. And now, that was 6 years ago. Now I use hockey and sport for self-care. It's a huge thing for me to be out on the ice, and I don't think about anything else. I don't think about, the stuff that's going on externally. I just think about being on the ice, and it really keeps me in the moment, in the present stuff. And I think that hockey, along with, exercise, is a huge, huge part of self-care when you're dealing with mental health and addiction.
So as a coach and having a bunch of youth under your wing, what is the message, or is there a message that you put forward when it comes to mental health and addiction while you're coaching with these young kids?
I always just tell these kids like not to put so much pressure on themselves, and that's so much easier said than done, because I was the king of putting pressure on myself. And any team that I've coached with some pretty cool teams, and any team that I coach, one of my first messages to them is don't be afraid to reach out to your hockey coach, because I'm not just a hockey coach, that I can help you out with some, say, performance anxiety, some anxiety coming to the rink, or if there's big games, that it's just another game, and it's just another 60 minutes of hockey. It doesn't matter that there's a great big trophy and diamond rings at the end of it. Every game is just 60 minutes, and I just try to ease the players so that they're not so anxious, and that they can just be themselves. And I think that that's been a huge success throughout my coaching career, is that we're just a pack. We're a wolf pack, and if one goes down, we're all going down with them to save them, kind of thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So to segue real quick into the outreach work that you do. So the outreach stuff is right front level, working right with people on the street and the homeless and people in full-blown mental health and addiction. How do you use those skills that you've learned in coaching and hockey to meet people on the street?
I think my big thing is I just meet people where they're at, and I'm not God. I'm not going to stop addiction. But I can be an example that recovery is possible, and that I think at the root of everything, I just look at everyone as if they're someone's child, and I try to keep their dignity intact, and it doesn't make them less of a person because they're an active user or they don't want to get help. That's not for me to decide for them, and I just try to support people the best that I can, and meet them where they're at. And I think that that's successful to build rapport with people and to build relationships. And I think relationships are key in trying to keep people alive. I always say that stigma is the thing that kills people, and I'm sick of going to funerals. So if I can just be a kind person to people, then they have a little bit of trust in me.
Awesome. So you mentioned stigma, and stigma is, it's literally in the title of the show. So it's something that we want to, address with everybody that's on the show. What is it that you think, if you had a magic wand, what is it that you think that we could change in our culture and society, or even in sports for that matter, to break down some of the stigma and help people to be able to open up and get the help that they need?
I think that education is a huge thing on the broader scale in the public, that people still think that the addict is the guy under the bridge. And, like an addict can be your teacher, an addict can be the firefighter, it can be a police officer. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the addict is the guy under the bridge with the sack over his, and stick over his shoulder, that anyone can be affected by this. And 1 in 5 doesn't mean 1 in 5 people under the bridge. It means 1 in 5 people globally. And it doesn't matter what your background is, how much money you have in your bank account, what kind of car you drive, what kind of diploma you have. Like, everyone is susceptible to becoming an addict. And if we just take the kind of view that people are humans and humans have addictions, and we really base it on simplifying that any human can be afflicted with this, but any human can also become recovered or in recovery from this. And I think that's the flip side of it, is we blame society, but we are society. And so we have to put some of that work in to debunk these stigmas that, only good behaved, non-drug using people deserve shelter. Like, that's such a huge stigma that, I would be pretty upset if I was living on the street and I couldn't access shelter because of the gaps in the system. I'd be pretty upset too. And so then, there's another stigma that he doesn't behave well, so he doesn't deserve shelter, or he doesn't deserve treatment. And I think everyone deserves treatment. I think everyone deserves a chance at treatment, and everyone deserves a chance at recovery, because humans are cool. Humans are really cool, and we have big hearts, and we can do amazing things. And I just know that through my own story, that someone has taken me under their wing, and maybe I had to work really, really hard, but I still get stigmatized now. I still get stigmatized, and I have just over 7 years sobriety, and I still get stigmatized. And it's going to be a never-ending battle, but I think I'm not going to give up on it. And I think I have a pretty solid network of people in my life that are anti-stigma, and that's a beautiful thing to have.
Amazing. What resonated with me is we blame society, but we are society.
Yep.
That's a big one, and that's where all the changes has to happen, I believe, as well. So that's fantastic, Polly. I appreciate you being on the show. I wish you all the success in the world with I Am 1 in 5. We're going to continue this process of talking about addiction and this show hopefully in the future, and we would love to have you back some other time and to see how things are going with 1 in 5, and wish you all the best with your outreach work and touching those who need it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dean. I appreciate it.
I've got a fantastic guest on the show right now that's joining us. A former resident of London, Ontario, Canada, but is now currently residing in BC, but known by many and loved by all. I've got rocker, songwriter, singer Sarah Smith on the show. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, Dean. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us on this electronic interview today. How are you? How are things?
Oh man, things are incredible. I've had a lot of changes in the last year or so in my life. And so I'm just sort of sitting in those changes right now, and I'm feeling happy in those changes. So things are good.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I want to jump right into asking you questions, and it's about the first thing I want to ask you about is I want to ask you about your advocacy work and some of the things that you've done, and you've used your music in your career, and you've propelled and done songs that are about addiction and about stigma and about breaking things down. And I want to know, some of the experiences that you had, or share with me what's kind of been hard or difficult about that process.
Man, I know stigma firsthand because I do it to myself. I'm like, a lot of times on these sort of podcasts or even at shows, I tell my story. I tell it openly and candidly. I'm very honest with my past life and my use of substance and what it did to my soul and how empty I felt. And that's sort of, that feeling is sort of the nemesis of what I use to songwrite. That feeling of emptiness and feeling like there's more to life, and sitting in that sort of feeling. A lot of my songs came from that feeling. So I talk about it a lot. And then sometimes I listen back to my interviews and I think, oh my God, who is that woman? She went through all that. She did that. And I start to feel shame for myself. And I start to think I'm dirty, and I can't believe I did that. And, I feel the stigma on myself. And, there's things like Possible. They're a service from ADS-TV, Addiction Services, Thames Valley. They have helped me a lot in that word stigma. They've helped me to see that, addiction doesn't pick and choose who it comes to in life. It just chooses regular folk from all walks of life. And if we end up on the street begging for food, that is where our addiction takes us. And it could be my brother, it could be me. And if addiction takes us to losing our house, that's where it takes us. And it could be my mom, it could be my grandmother. And if addiction takes us just to feeling low and empty, that's where my addiction takes me. And I have to be reminded that it affects all walks of life. So thank you to Possible for showing me that it does affect everybody, all walks of life, and the lucky ones are us who get to receive it.
Right. That's a wonderful campaign that Addiction Services of Thames Valley has going. It really is starting to open up some conversations and some dialogue around that whole thing. So in this process that you've been going through, what have you found that's the most rewarding? What is it that you talk about how deep and emotional, and how the pain that comes into music and singing rock and roll. Sometimes you've got to dig deep for that stuff. But what's been rewarding? What have you gained?
Well, I think I've gained even more than I lost over addiction. I'm talking about it. I'm able to share my experience and my strength and my hope with other fellow addicts that are suffering. And I've seen people change their lives through, just being able to be a friend to them, or by sharing my music with them. I get emails all the time of people saying, this song changed my life. That's pretty huge. My music is helping. It's helping, this is incredible. So I think the number one thing is the tunes. The songs that have come out of this have been unreal. So that's pretty cool. And I get to share those songs with the world and whoever wants to listen to them. I guess that's the most reward, is helping other people through my music.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because it is. I mean, we're talking about addiction being vastly an inability to cope, right? So it's about emotion. It's about feeling. It's about dealing with things that I don't feel good about, or things I can't get through, whether it be shame or stigma or whatever that might be. Being able to have an avenue directly to somebody's emotional portal, so to speak. Music does it. It does it for all of us. We listen to music and we're triggered, and we can control our emotions through it. So that's definitely a powerful media that you have to be able to help people. That's fantastic. One question that I had that really stands out to me is, I know that there is a joint connection between rock and roll, live concerts, and with partying, with substance use, with addiction, and all of those things. And it's a big barrier for people that want to find help, because they're like, oh, I won't be able to go to those shows, I won't be able to do those things, I won't be able to have fun the way I used to have. And here you are in the front line having fun doing those things, and not having to partake, or feeling the need to partake in any of those things. What type of advice or tips would you give people when looking at how to overcome that?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. People always say to me, I don't know how you do it. How do you go to the bars every night and play music? And I guess my answer is, I'm just experienced. The bar is my workplace. It's where I've been working for 20 years, 30 years. I'm not quite 30, but I'm getting up there. So for me, it's experience. But I will say that there are, some people that do get triggered by going to a bar. Most do. It does, if you have a long length of sobriety under your belt, nothing really will affect your sobriety, I don't think. After a few years, you can build up this warrior inside you that nothing outside of you will affect you anymore. It's just that when you go to a bar, it just becomes kind of gross if you're sober and everybody around you is not. It's not a fun way to spend an evening. So for me, I recommend going to different venues. There's outdoor festivals. Try not to get into the beer gardens. There's pride concerts. There's street dances. There's cafes. There's even shows in libraries. There's online shows. There's a place called Stage It. It's a company online. They have concerts going 24 hours a day. You can buy tickets to some great concerts online. You can get together with friends and do like a record club where you listen to an album for a week, and then you get together and you talk about the album over some dinner or a coffee. And a lot of times, if you stay away from the bars, then your friends will also stay away from getting too wasted. I do feel like if your GOC, your genre of choice, is rock and roll, then
love it.
Then you might consider a few tips from myself, which is to never be the DD. I believe that as a sober person, I feel that you're putting too much responsibility on your sobriety, and you will end up being resentful, and you will want to drag people out of there at 10 o'clock, and they ain't leaving at 10 o'clock, and you'll just see the worst of your friends because alcohol progresses through the night, and it's gross at the end of the night, and you don't want that in your car. Trust me. Yeah. And also, the number one thing I recommend, if you have to go to a bar, have an out. have an escape route, have a plan in place that, you know, by 10 o'clock, when people are starting to get a buzz on and it just doesn't feel like you belong there anymore, that you have your keys and you have your vehicle or your bus pass and you can get out of there and go home safely. And if the party's at your house, give yourself a sacred space to call your own and just excuse yourself and say, guys, I'm done and I'm going to bed. And they're probably happy that you're going to bed anyway. Nobody wants to drink with a sober person.
Yeah. That's awesome. Those are some fantastic tips. The DD thing, I think that's awesome that you bring it up, because I think a lot of people just assume I'm just going to be the DD and then I won't have to drink. I won't need to worry about that. But the responsibility that you're putting on yourself to take care of other people can easily turn into resentment and turn into an uncomfortable situation, or even make you just say, you know, I can't beat them. I'm going to join them. We're all calling a cab and I'm going to drink instead, for sure. And then all of those tips with music, so many beautiful ways to connect with music that don't necessarily have to have drugs and alcohol involved, and you can
actually
find what you need.
Sorry, Dean. One of my favorite things about going out to live music, my partner and I go all the time, is we go to dinner shows where you can eat dinner and you get to see the band. And like, to me, dinner shows are the best because us sober people, we love food. Like, what else do we go out now? Yeah. So let's eat some good food and watch a band, and then we can leave.
Absolutely. And having an out, always having an out, even in your own house, having an out. Great tips. I love it. So last one, really super quick. If you could go back in time and you could tell yourself one thing in the past, the old Sarah, the Sarah that was in substance use and addiction, what's the advice that you'd give her real quick?
I would say, Sarah, you are worthy of a life that is blessed, that is happy and healthy, and you are strong enough to get through this. It will be hard work to quit and to commit to quitting at first, but the rewards they're endless. I'm telling you right now, those beautiful promises that you want in your life will come true in time. Amazing.
And I believe it. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sarah. I appreciate it. And I hopefully get to get out to those mountains sometime soon and visit.
Come here. It's beautiful.
It is. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Polly and Sarah are two of my most favorite people for a couple of reasons. One is obviously they're both in recovery. Two, they continue to do what they love, regardless. Polly playing hockey, Sarah playing music. And there's one other thing that they have in common that's really important to the work that I do, and it's important to me and how I feel every day. And that's giving back. They give back to the community. They share their voice. They share their story so that other people can hear how they overcame what they overcame and what was involved in doing that. Also showing people that on the other side of that addiction can be quality of life. It can be fun and excitement. It can be music and sports and entertainment. Giving back is so vital and so important in so many ways. And people don't realize just how important it is. And it's a major component to addiction recovery. They use it as part of the 12-step process. And then most people use it every day for a bunch of reasons. One, when I give back and I help society and I do something for somebody else, I get some feel-good chemicals. Some oxytocin shoots up in my brain and I feel good. And when you're in recovery from addiction, you don't always feel good. Right? So those chemicals can help us to feel better. Not only that, many people that are in recovery suffer from low self-esteem because of the stigma and the shame that that's been pushed upon them over the time while they were in addiction. The things that they've done wrong haunt them, or they feel guilty about their past. So every single time that somebody does something nice for somebody else, that does wonders for your self-esteem. It does wonders for your internal dialogue and how you think about yourself and the things you say to yourself every day. So given those opportunities to give back are extremely, extremely invaluable. And Polly and Sarah show that every day through the work and the stuff that they do on social media, and even just the way that they carry themselves in everyday life. Another part of that is when they use their voice and they share those things in that out loud fashion, other people who are suffering, and not just the people suffering, but the family members, get that opportunity to see that they're not alone, that there's other people out there. And addiction and substance use can be very isolating and can make people think that they're the only ones on the planet. They're the only people that could possibly be feeling what they're feeling. And every single time that somebody shares their voice, and every time somebody does that, they show someone else that it's possible to recover, and that they can get better, and they can heal and grow. And for that, I'm forever grateful to Polly and Sarah for that. They do that. And anybody else who does that, thank you. And remember, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now.